Hi, Andrew. Let's take a look at this latest set of essays. We've got the school subjects in Germany. Okay, the given pie chart has shown popularity of 7 school modules in Germany in 2017. Okay, I don't like the tense here has shown. It should be shows. Yeah, just simple present. There's no reason for you to use the past perfect here, and it sounds actually a little strange. So avoid that and just keep it as present simple. I have a set expression that I always tell my students to use, and it's just the diagram provides information on. Okay, so you can use it for anything, whether it's a pie chart or a bar graph or what have you. So it provides information on because it provides it, and that's just you know a constant truth, and which is the other reason why this should be present simple. Okay, it shows it's a constant truth. Okay. All right, from the graph, it is clear that the majority of students from Germany favored PE, history, maths, and physics, accounting for 22.9, 22.4 of the total, respectively. Okay. Whereas does not start a sentence unless it has two clauses. So what do I mean? I mean, whereas is like while, where it has to combine two contrasting pieces of information in a sentence. So like essentially you take two sentences and you combine them with whereas. So I don't like it just like this on its own. Um, you could have said how like here, however. So however, biology, geography, and IT are among the least popular subjects. Okay. Uh, this is interesting. We'll talk about this a little more. As the chart illustrates, physical education history were the two most preferred subjects in school in Germany, with seemingly identical numbers of students opting for each. Fine. Together, these subjects account for nearly half of the total subjects selected. Good. On the other hand, IT students are the minority in school. Well, that's not really true. IT students. It's just which ones were popular. So it's not like it's an inaccurate expression here because the graph is asking you which subjects were the most popular. It doesn't mean that there were fewer students in those subjects. So maybe all the students took all of these subjects, but some were less liked than others. Does that make sense? So I don't want you to say that IT students are the minority in school. It's an inaccuracy. We don't know that. Um, it should have been, on the other hand, students who preferred IT are the minority in school. That would be correct. Where only 3.7% of students have taken on the syllabus. That's an inaccuracy here too, have taken on the syllabus. It doesn't make sense and it's inaccurate. Almost 7 times less than the most popular subject, PE. All right, that's good. Overall in 2017, subject choice in German school, again, it's not what they chose, it's what was most popular. They might have had to take all of them as part of the curriculum, okay? Was about evenly, so its popularity was evenly distributed, not between, because between is only for two, it should be among. 4 most popular subjects in PE, and overwhelmingly fewer, not less. Remember, we use less with uncountable and fewer with countable. Less time, less money, less effort, but we say fewer with things that are countable. Hours, dollars, yeah. Well, fewer, well, a, oh, okay, hold on. I would have just said, well, fewer students, not a, okay, oh boy, let me try that again. So, smaller number of students or fewer students is the way you would have done this. And I don't like this, have taken on the other subjects, because I already told you that it's inaccurate, and I also don't like it as an expression. Okay, so what I've done in this correction is I've gone over a lot of the grammar and the vocabulary, which was fine in some places, it was good in some places, and then others that had some issues. So we covered those issues. This is coming up. Okay. What I want to talk about is what you actually decided to talk about and how you organized your answer. So, in other words, I want to talk about task achievement and coherence and cohesion. I can't say that I love the way you organized this. It felt like a lot of it was repetitive, and it felt like some of the stuff you didn't talk about really at all. which is really strange for me. So let me show you what I mean. You have 7 pieces of data here. So obviously you're gonna have to talk about all of them. You need to. And I like one thing you did where you said that it accounted for nearly half the total subjects. That was a smart thing to do. So when you have a graph where there's not a lot of information, you do have to make these connections. I also like what you said here, 7 times less. That was good too. That was a connection. Those are the things you should be doing when you have very little data to work with, like this. Um, but like I said, I felt like this was strangely organized and that you missed some details that you should have absolutely included. So let's start here. I, in the beginning, thought this was your overview. Now, you probably know, and I think I've said this to you in the past, that I always like it when your overview comes right after your introduction because it's an overview, it's not a conclusion. Okay. And what does an overview mean? It gives us just the main general idea of the graph. So for that reason, I do like it to come right after the introduction. Okay? It's kind of like what's the most important thing. So that for me in a task like this should come right after the introduction. Okay? Um the other reason why I always suggest it coming right after the introduction is because sometimes I find students run out of time. Okay. And if you leave it to the end, there's a good possibility you're going to run out of time. Um, Obviously, if you do task 1 first, then that might not happen. But I usually tell students to do task 2 first and then task 1 second. And so it's very possible that when you're writing task 1, if you leave your overview to the end, you might not have time. So for the reasons I just mentioned, I like the overview to come right after the introduction. But in the examiners will tell you it doesn't matter either way. Okay? Like I said, for me, it's a personal preference. So when I read this, I thought it was an overview, okay? Especially this sentence. It is clear that this whole thing, but then you started with data, and then I was like, oh, okay. So Andrew's going right into details. Therefore, it's not an overview because remember, the overview should never include any data. But here, essentially, what you did was you gave us kind of like an overview of it. So you split the bar chart into the pie chart into 2 sections where you've got the 4 subjects that had, 18% and over, and then you talked about these. So it kind of felt like an overview, but it wasn't because you had data. So that confused me. And then you went into, I guess, kind of detail. I mean, you essentially told me again that history and PE were the 2 most preferred. You already told us up here that they were almost identical. So I didn't really think that we needed this information again. And then you said it accounted for half. So a lot of this organization felt really weird to me. Now, the interesting thing is here you talk about IT, but you don't talk anywhere about geography or biology, which I thought was super bizarre. Okay, you didn't give any data about that. And then here you've got your overview, okay? And your overview was fine. So let me tell you what I wanted to say. All right, this we already talked about the grammar here. Leave the sentence here. I would have taken this sentence or these 2 sentences and I would have put it right here. And then I would have kind of picked and selected some of this information. So what I would like to see is very much like what you did where you talked about PE and history, that thing you said about them accounting for around 45% or almost half, that's fine. But then talk about maths and physics, about how they're slightly less, they're both a little less than 20%, etc., etc. Okay. And then I wanted another paragraph about these 3 minority pieces here, biology, IT, and geography. I like the connection you made about IT being 7 times less than PE, but you didn't say anything about biology and geography. You could have told me, for example, that biology was twice as popular as IT. That would have been a really good connection to make, okay? And that geography was somewhere in the middle, okay? Or somewhat less than biology. So those are the kinds of things that you need to be doing here. So that's how I would have organized it. Introduction, then your overview, and then selecting some of these key points here, but definitely having a paragraph about the 3 minor subjects. Okay. All right, so let's go into your task 2 about online communication. All right, let's see. The rising popularity of digital communication in different countries has grown in importance year on year. I don't know what this means year on year. It should be year after year. It has grown. Okay. Some may suggest this phenomenon takes a toll on the work effectiveness within the office, yet I believe the positive impact it brings outweighs the negative ones. Okay. This essay will weigh the pros and cons of online platforms using examples from UCL and Harvard University. Capitalize your U here to demonstrate the point of the argument. All right, that's fine. I want to bring up one point here. You say the pros and cons of online platforms. Remember, that's only part of what they've asked you about. That's only part of it. They're telling you that we're doing a lot more of this than we are of this. Okay? So, in other words, we don't meet as often as we used to. Instead, we're using all these different platforms to communicate. Is this good or bad? Okay? This shift. That's what you're supposed to be talking about. Not whether online communication on its own is good or bad, but this shift away speaking face to face in favor of online methods, if that is good or bad. Does that make sense? There is a difference. It's subtle, but as far as I'm concerned, for me, understanding that difference and focusing on that difference in this essay is the difference between a very good essay and an essay that's just good. Okay? So let's continue. On one hand, attending meetings in person is important for businesses to maintain productivity. I would not have put a comma here. All right, what I would have done instead is full stop, because this is a brand new sentence. This is mainly because, etc., etc. Or I would have gotten rid of this is, and then I would have just kept the sentence going. So it's important to maintain productivity, mainly because presence of body in conferences brings an appropriate sense of pressure for the attendees to focus on answering questions appropriately. All right, it's a little much. It's also a little long. Remember, I usually tell students that once you get to the 3rd line, you need to rethink the sentence and worry maybe about its accuracy, and maybe that's a little too long. So let's try it again. On one hand, attending meetings in person is important for businesses to maintain productivity, mainly because presence at conferences brings a sense of pressure for attendees to focus appropriately. Brings a sense of pressure for how about 2 attendees to focus? I would have really made this more concise. Okay, because it's not just questions when you're at a conference, but it's actually just being able to focus, to follow the information being given, and to follow the discussion and all that stuff. So I would have definitely made this sentence far more concise. For example, surveys conducted by the UCL in 2017 illustrated that 54% of office employees in London admitted that they complete discussions more slowly, carefully, over Skype calls, and may miss out key information to follow up. All right, this is awkward. And may miss out on key information required to follow up. These changes make this sentence make more sense to me. However, it is notable that the statistics dropped year after year as the workforce got more familiar with telecommunication platforms in recent years. Therefore, comma, it is conclusively clear that in-person meetings proved to be more effective for workers in attendance. Nevertheless, careful with your comma. It should go right after the E and then leave a space. It can be compensated. That doesn't make sense. That's the wrong word. As workers grow in experience in the use of telecom platforms. Okay, I want to think about this paragraph. Let me go to your next one, and I'm going to avoid any further comments on it. So let me see what else you wrote. Okay. On the other hand, the mass adoption of Zoom, Teams, and Skype calls could be cost saving for global companies due to the fact that these platforms can eliminate unnecessary costs for travel and accommodations that are required for physical meetings. You can't do that with due to the fact that. You could have said here, this is due to the fact that. All right, like what I suggested up here, new sentence. Or you could have just made it one sentence, which should probably be avoided because then you see how long that sentence is. So it should have been a new sentence with this is due to the fact that. For example, an extensive study by Harvard University has shown that average company costs, plural, for flights and hotel expenses dropped by 60% since the introduction of remote work. Thus, it is possible to state beyond doubt that digital communication tools have superior ROI over traditional face-to-face meetings. Okay. From the arguments and examples given, I firmly believe that although the familiarity of in-person meetings may prove effective for companies, introduction of digital communication platforms can benefit them far more economically. It is believed that the role of online communication platforms will increasingly more important. Okay, that's fine. All right, so let's look at this essay one more time. You said the positive impact outweighs it. Okay. Now, let me just kind of think aloud while I look at this paragraph, okay? So you said that people feel more pressured when they're in person. And then you said that they felt less pressure and were not as effective when they were on Skype. And then here you said, however, we see that this is changing. And then that these meetings are more effective, but as we grow more familiar with telecom, we're getting better. Okay. You can see here that one of the reasons I'm struggling, there are a couple of reasons. Number one, there's no one central idea. So in other words, you started off talking about why in-person meetings are good. And then as the paragraph progressed, you said, yeah, but, okay. So I found that a little strange. You typically want to keep to one central idea in each paragraph. Okay. So I think that this paragraph really should have just focused on what's good about in-person meetings. How about that employees bond and it creates a better sense of teamwork in the company. Perhaps there is a better sharing of ideas because many people are all in one room together rather than on screens on a little squares on a screen. So it creates a better communication. Okay, so these are all things that I think you could have talked about in this paragraph. The other thing that concerns me is that supposedly this is the paragraph that you're supporting. But you can see it's actually considerably shorter than the one that you supposedly don't support. So if this is about 10 lines, this is only like 7. So obviously your examiner is not going to be counting your lines or anything, but it is something to think about. It feels like this is less supported and less developed, and that could be a problem for you. The other thing that I want you to remember is that this is not about online communication good, in-person meetings bad. This is an oversimplification of this topic, and a lot of people get this wrong. It's about the shift. Okay, so it should be the shift to online communication is bad. Okay, or why it's bad. And then this should be the shift to online communication is good. Why? Okay, again, comparing it to in-person meetings. Does that make sense? So when you look at it in that sense, what could you say? Why is the shift to online communication bad? Well, because we don't have that sense of camaraderie that we used to have when we would meet in person. We don't create personal connections with our colleagues. Everything is much more, kind of antiseptic when you're sitting in front of a screen and everyone is in a little square in front of you. Okay, that's why this shift is bad. However, you could also say that the shift is very good because we're so much more efficient. Okay. Also, many times these meetings are recorded, and so nothing is lost. It's like, whereas if it's in person, people might not remember, people might not, may misinterpret, but now you've got a video recording so you can check back. Also, don't forget that online communication is also email. So that also provides a record of what has been communicated. Okay. So this can't happen in a meeting unless someone is taking minutes. But now with email or even with like other things like Slack or what have you, people can have a written record of what was discussed and what was said. So those are some of the positives of this shift away from personal in-person meetings towards online meetings. Andrew, does that make sense? I hope it does. Like I said, I find a lot of students have a misunderstanding about what this essay is really about. All right, I liked your conclusion. I thought that was fine. So, I mean, there were good things about this, but I do think that there was definitely some room for growth here and for improvement. So, let's see what you do in your next set. I'm looking forward to it. Good luck.